All right, little beef bologna at 3/4 speed, faster than it normally should be. And it all makes sense. And that was the great Lee Ving and Fear from Saturday Night Live, the infamous Saturday Night Live episode that got them banned from Saturday Night Live because they destroyed the stage. Little beef bologna. It's a good theme to fire up for today's topic du jour, which is going to feature somebody I have known for a few years now, going back to the late 90s, my friend Giselle Bisson, and her recovery from being a vegan and now being targeted by the vegan mafia. So we're going to get into that today. But before we do, I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to avail themselves of the products of today's sponsor, my one and only sponsor, which is True Hemp Science. I call it more of a partnership than a sponsorship. So if you have any interest in what I consider to be some of the best hemp products on the internet, and I know that there's lots of hemp products out there, which one is the best for me? How do I know which one is really good? Well, let me just give you my personal assessment and affirmation for Chris's products, because I've known Chris personally for years, and I've seen him grow his business. I've seen the blood, sweat, and tears that he puts into it, from connecting and having partnerships with people who organically source the CBD, all the way to the production, which he is involved in at a hands-on level, to the distribution and shipping of the product. So he is a soup to nuts operation. And I've detailed my relationship with the CBD as well. He used to send me, his early packages and samples in these sealed plastic straws, like the ones that have the honey in them. He used to send them to me. And I mean, wow, man, this is really interesting and very effective stuff. Well, he's refined it over time, but now he's got a whole product line at truehempscience.com. So if you are interested in experiencing the many different shades of CBD, which he has on his website, go to truehempscience.com/ref/23, and you can get free product when you spend $100 or more. And all you need to do is order a couple of things here. And people will say, well, CBD is a little pricey. Well, you get what you pay for sometimes. And that's the case, right? There's a reason why off the lot Mercedes costs so much. In most cases, those Mercedes are worth it in the first 3 years of when you have them, right? There's a reason. So you're probably going to pay maybe a little bit more for his product, but what you're going to get is equal to the product itself. And again, how do you gauge the efficacy of a business? It's the return customers, and Chris has plenty of them. So it should speak for itself. Anyway, go to truehempscience.com/ref/23, type in 15MINS on checkout, and you'll get your free product. Spend $150 or more, and you get free shipping. All right, let's bring in the rabble rouser, Giselle, who's I haven't seen. This is really kind of interesting because I actually haven't seen Giselle in quite a while. And did we have to? I think you have to unmute. Did you unmute?
There we go.
Yeah.
Go. Hi.
So you had to experience the wrath and the ire of the vegans for us to come face to face again. This is interesting.
Well, actually, the vegans started hassling me 3 years ago, and I started recovering vegan on Twitter in December of 2019 after I had a car accident that left me in intractable 24-hour a day, 7 days a week pain. And I was so tired and deeply fatigued and in so much pain that all I could do was hold up my phone while I was lying on the couch and tweet. And I started this page anonymously so I could follow keto doctors and nutritionists because of a rumor. I'd heard a rumor in a chat on Facebook that this guy started eating meat after being a vegan and he was able to overcome his back pain. And I thought, and then I heard again and again from friends, you really should try the keto diet. I didn't know what the hell that was, but I was afraid because every one of my friends, my family, everybody around me, my whole world was vegan. I was afraid to do that as myself. So I created this anonymous profile. And right off the bat, I was very outspoken. And this troll on Twitter, Veganella in the UK, started trying to out me and ridicule me. And she actually got me blocked on Twitter. And I went to Twitter jail for a while, and I lost my account and got locked out. And it was controversy from the get-go.
Right. So, full disclosure, I've known you since I think maybe 1998 or 1999, somewhere around
Earlier.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, like 94.
Wow.
We met at Larry Harvey's 50th birthday party. And Craig Newmark was there.
So that was the Anon Salon space,
it was
right?
In that space. It was in Joe Bullock's loft. All these people are deceased now. Joe died. Larry Harvey died. Larry was the founder of Burning Man. It was an amazing party. Yeah, that's where we met.
So that's a really interesting time. Aside from the fact that we're going to get into your current crusade. That was a really interesting time, and it was a very creative time in San Francisco, in the Bay Area, and the internet was kind of this nascent thing. And there was this really interesting crossover and bleed through from these 60s trippers and radicals who were kind of pioneering the internet. So there was this feeling of, well, this is the new level of consciousness, or, these are the new nodes of experiential zones, right, where people can gather together. So it was a really fun, good, interesting time to be alive in San Francisco. I have to admit that. And running pretty much all the way up through the, kind of the end of the 90s and into the early 2000s, begins to change a little bit in the early 2000s. So the times themselves, I think, were unique. It was a unique period, place, and space. And for people that aren't aware, Larry Harvey was the guy that started Burning Man. So that's who Giselle is referencing. And it was kind of the early days of the Burning Man Mafia. What do you, just before we dive
being
into
in that room was like being at Studio 54 in New York. It was like a scene. It was a very activated scene at that time where a lot of things birthed.
I think that's a really good analogy. It's also like kind of being in Paris during the 20s, right?
Yep.
I mean, it had a lot of that vibe to it. You had all these seminal characters who were, in that orbit, like John Perry Barlow,
right?
Who would pop up there, and people don't know who Joe Bullock probably was unless you're in that scene. But Joe Bullock was a guy who threw all these events and kind of created the live cradle for a lot of this stuff to happen. And then you had, and again, it was part of he never showed up, but this is all happening around the same time. You had Sasha Shulgin, who is the guy who created MDMA, and they'd have these full moon parties around Sasha. I used to go to those parties, and all this stuff was happening, right? All this stuff was happening in the Bay Area at that time. Terrence McKenna is really kicking into Alien Dreamtime. And Jose Arguelles is there, right?
Really?
well, not at those parties, but he's around San Francisco and around the culture at that time. So you have all these, kind of massive cultural giants that are kind of coming to the peak of their powers, in the mid to late 90s. And these Anon Salon parties that would happen at Joe Bullock's space were an incubator for a lot of, creative ideas of potential and synergy. And that's where we met. So what are your thoughts about that time, just besides the fact that that was the place to be in a lot of ways?
Well, I've written about that as a journalist. I did an article about the birth of Burning Man. I've done several articles in the San Jose Metro and some other magazines, and independently as a blogger. And I wrote about Joe and the Anon Salon and the link to the birth of not just Burning Man and the alternative art scene, which was huge, but also the internet itself. I mean, the first time I saw Mosaic demonstrated was in that room. Mosaic, for the kids out there, Mosaic was the first browser. And Craig Newmark started Craigslist in that room. Match.com, the dating service, the first dating service, online dating service, started in that room. That's where I saw these things demoed. So it was an underground party, it was a rave, it was crazy costumes and art and all these different rooms. In each room you would walk in and there was a different demo happening. It was the first place I saw VR and Jaron Lanier, and the first place you saw three-dimensional graphics. The guy who invented that was in the room, Greg McNichol. And we all became friends. And so there was this inner network. And now what's happening is that group of people are entering their 60s and 70s, and they're dying early. And dying too young, mostly of cancer. Yeah.
Right. So you and I have actually talked about that. And Joe Bullock passed away. Kitty Wells passed away. Michael Gosney passed away. I'm probably losing a few as well.
Celestine Starr, they all died almost in the same month of cancer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And there is a common theme with them as well.
We know what it is.
We know what the common theme is.
Because that particular medical procedure was was advocated in the music production community, because everyone wanted to get back to work. They wanted the concerts and the parties to happen again. They wanted to get back to work. So they wanted everybody to be able to go out in public and get out of lockdown, right?
Right, exactly. And this has always been a real interesting Gordian knot in a lot of ways. Because when we mention some of these people, I would say the majority of them were really turned on, right? Like psychedelic consciousness and, understanding the importance of what you put in your body and what you keep out of your body. And also there's a kind of spirit of, techno anarchy that was kind of in the air, right? This kind of techno anarchy in the autonomous zone and Burning Man. And you would think that people that had, these core values, this kind of decentralized philosophy would have a much more awake and aware understanding of what's going on. And it always blows my mind to be reminded that they didn't. And
well, the same is true of veganism.
Yeah.
You would think that was adopted by the outliers. And
this is another conundrum. This is another conundrum. And another thing, it's like, what? You sit there and go, what? Like, you're going to go down this path and you're going to be plant-based and vegan. And yet you'll allow a complete stranger with an experimental gene therapy to puncture it and jab it into your skin, right? But you're so aware about everything else you put in your body. It is really mind-blowing. And it's one of those things of the human condition that I'm still trying to sort out in a lot of ways. Maybe we can
Well,
talk a
look,
little bit about that.
we're coming to a realization now of how manipulated we have. And we've been manipulated in so many ways, on so many levels. The manipulation is so deep. And, you know, for me to go from being a vegan, not just a vegan, but a vegan chef, an evangelizer, somebody who catered, studied with one of the top vegan chefs in the world, actually several of the top vegan chefs in the world, followed around Gabriel Cousens, Dr. Cousens, followed around David Wolf. I mean, I wasn't just following these people, I was hanging out with them, I was partying with them, I was working for them, producing events with them that were vegan catered. I did the first camp at Burning Man that was all vegan meal plan. We served vegan food to 560 people. We had the Hare Krishnas giving cookies away to people, you know, vegan cookies. I was totally proselytizing. I was not just someone who ate vegan food, right? I was deeply embedded in that culture. And to go from that to the absolute opposite, where I'm starting my day with bacon and eggs and a half-pound ribeye steak seared in beef lard, you know, it's now what causes someone to once you learn the truth about human nutrition, the human diet, and realize how deeply we've been deceived and how we were tricked into deceiving others, you question everything. Because it's like, how you know, deep is the deception if everything in the grocery store is BS? You know, the whole food pyramid is take it and turn it upside down. That's the food pyramid. The pyramid is upside down. It is the exact opposite of what we should be eating. Everything that we're told in medicine about why we're sick, about why we get cancer, about why we get autoimmune disease, about the origin of arthritis, all of these diseases that you get, and you go to the doctor and the doctor says, I don't know what causes this and I don't have any way to help you. These are all the diseases of Dr. Shrugs, right?
Dr. Shrugs, I like
you know, and in my case, the doctor said, we don't know why every inch of your body hurts all the time, but there's nothing else I can do for you. I'll refer you to pain management. And pain management means you go on opiates. Basically, so we have a system that gives up, can't treat people, and refers them to basically become opiate addicts, heroin addicts, basically. You know, state-sponsored, use your health insurance, and by then you're broke and all you can get is Medi-Cal. And so the government is paying for you to go on pain meds. And then the cruelty of that is that once you get addicted to pain meds, you need more and more and more. And then that leads us to the current problem with fentanyl and the current opiate epidemic and the crime problem that we're facing, not just in the United States, in big cities like San Francisco and LA, but worldwide, where people start on these pain meds, get addicted. The doctor won't prescribe it to you anymore.
That's the big part. There's like, sorry,
Sorry,
liability here. Yeah.
They pull the plug and now you can't get your prescription and you're addicted and you're in pain. So people then turn to street drugs and they find that the street drugs are cheaper. So, you know, go to the street for your meds, or they end up using, you know, Rick Simpson oil and different, I mean, I was using a lot of CBD. You know, the strongest CBD I could find is CBD was my ally and helped me get through the darkest moments of my pain, topical, oral, you know, and DMSO, you know, it was just like anything to get rid of the pain, right? So I empathize with people ending up addicted to these drugs, and then they end up in jail. And then the jails are full, mostly full of people who are addicted to opiates, who are detoxing in jail. And then they kick them out of jail and put them in 12-step programs and recovery houses. You know,
if they're lucky.
If they're lucky. If they're lucky, they get in recovery. If they're lucky, they end up on methadone. But mostly we have this massive social problem, and at the core of it, what I'm learning and what I'm writing about in my book is at the core of this problem is the lie about the food pyramid. Because if we were actually eating the right diet, we wouldn't be in pain in the first place. It's that simple.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to validate your story, you and I went to Ja Levi's party out in Marin County, and David Wolf was there.
I
Right?
don't remember that. Oh my God.
You don't remember this? Oh, okay.
Yeah, holding court in the
Well,
cult of the vegan central.
Yeah. So, and you had a bad tummy, and David Wolf gave you activated charcoal
Oh,
for your bad tummy. So I can attest to the fact that you were there in ground zero, right? And I remember one time you came over to my house and you looked in my refrigerator and you were aghast at all the condiments that I had in my refrigerator door. It was like, how can you have that stuff inside your refrigerator?
taking up space.
Yeah. Well,
Unnecessary.
I think you were also highly suspicious of the additives inside my condiment collection. So, your story for me is legit because, I know you and I knew you through that period.
And you
And
knew me before I went vegan.
that's right.
And you knew that before I went vegan, I was a millionaire. I owned a house in San Francisco. I had a brand new car. I had a 6-figure executive job as a director, managing a huge team. I flew around the world and was, very competent. And as I got deeper into veganism, not only did my career go, but my brain was not functioning anymore. And I mean, more and more the vegan community is described as a cult. So I was in a cult, and I say that with love. I love these people. They're my good friends. They're lovely. They're wonderful folks. They're just as deluded as I was, unfortunately. And we were doing something that we thought was the best spiritual path. It was done for spiritual reasons. It was also done for ahimsa, nonviolence to all living beings. And we did it for health. We thought this was the best thing for our health and longevity and beauty. And we also did it for the planet and for the animals, to not take the violence of a dead being into our bodies. It was done for all of the reasons that people are drawn to veganism. It sounds like it's the way to save the planet. Oh, the planet is dying. It's a big catastrophe. The reason is because of meat. Mainly, the cows and grazing are taking the hit for every problem. Fishing is taking the hit for all the problems with the ocean. And I mean, really, let's step back from this story. It's BS. It's absolute BS, right?
Yeah, no,
It's
I
blaming
agree.
us for eating. It's really what it is it's taking what's been going on in India for centuries, and it's telling people, go on the slave diet. Go on the slave diet. It'll get you to heaven. If you give up meat, this has been going on in religions forever, right? Don't eat fish, only eat fish on Friday. Give up meat for Lent, right? In the Catholic faith, in Zen Buddhism, if you want to be a good monk, you're a vegetarian, almost a vegan. And yoga, to have the best meditation, what do? You give up meat. You eat a vegan diet. It helps you attain the samadhi, to attain these states of enlightenment, right? That's what we're told.
Yeah, and of course you had the explosion of the macrobiotic diet in the 1970s, which is kind of the gateway drug to veganism in a lot of ways. and
Aquabiotic,
yeah.
vegetarian. It
Yeah.
all started. Actually, the word vegan was coined in the 1940s by some guy who started the Vegetarian Society, which oddly enough started in San Francisco. And so there you have the ground zero for this movement that seemed like a good thing. And a lot of times, when I'm interviewed, I'm getting a lot of podcasts, a lot of interviews, doing a lot of press. I've been interviewed by authors working on books I was in Jane Buxton, her book, which recently came out, very controversial, called The Great Plant-Based Con. She's a journalist, and it's a very insightful book about how the plant-based diet is not what it seems on the surface, right? And is actually not the best answer for the environment, nor is it the best answer for our health. And she explores the corporate interests that are behind that, and the government interests in England in particular, that are really backing that movement. It's not grassroots as we think.
Right. I mean, clearly, when it dovetails and interlocks with the World Economic Forum, and with the emphasis on net carbon zero, right, and the removal of everything that produces carbon, including animals, by the way, and humans. That's a bit of a different jag, but that's all part of it. Mm-hmm. So, wow, let's not have as many cows around. So to not have as many cows around, we'll have to replace that with this plant-based diet, and then the cows are our friends. Then you have groups like PETA, who of course are kind of the attack dogs in the animal world, another layer of deep hypocrisy. And you and I know this, is that if you get people who are eating a plant-based diet, and if you're eating a plant-based diet, that's fine. We're not here to diss you or diss your lifestyle per se, right? What we're talking about here is kind of a collective response to what you've gone through. But I feel as though you take meat protein out of the diet, and what you wind up having is exactly what you talked about, which is a diet for slaves. Mm-hmm. Like, you have a diet for people who do not have vitality, do not have more complex proteins, and they become less of a problem. They're more easily managed and governed because their dietary predilections make it a lot easier for them to just fall in line. So this is really a big issue for people, because this is the fuel that keeps us kind of moving forward. And in a lot of ways, this is the front line of resistance to this tyranny that we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I didn't see it that way, but you could be right. When you start eating meat again, I'll just say, when I started eating meat again, but I know also from being in communication with people in the keto and carnivore movement worldwide now, once you start eating meat again, you go down a rabbit hole. I mean, because you realize, oh my God, this is what, we have been lied to so deeply, deeply deceived and lied to and conned for decades about our proper human diet. That's what we're calling it now. We're calling it the proper human diet, the diet that humans have been eating for 2 to 3 million years, up until the advent of agriculture, which was only 10,000 years ago. And up until the 1960s, 70s, even 80s, we primarily ate a meat-based diet. I mean, I go back and I look at school lunch menus. Look at a school lunch menu from when we were kids, the 60s. There was beef liver on the menu. Once a week, we had beef liver, at least in my school on the East Coast. We had steak, beef, chili with beef in it. We didn't have any vegan food. We didn't have any vegetarian food. We barely ate any vegetables. There was a vegetable on the side. It was usually corn or peas. We didn't eat salad. We didn't have juice. We didn't have smoothies. We didn't have corn chips and corn dogs and all this stuff what happened is we got baited and switched somewhere around the 1980s, started being told by advertising and media, started telling us that it was better to start the day with cereal. Give up those unhealthy eggs. Eggs are bad. They have cholesterol. They're going to kill you. Give up bacon. Bacon's bad. Bacon has saturated fat. That's going to give you heart disease. And instead, eat these heart-healthy whole grains and heart-healthy fats. So we started getting this heart-healthy fats, right? And that line started programming us with this idea that saturated animal fat, lard was bad. Replace that with canola oil. And McDonald's used to cook the fries in beef tallow. And then they shifted to cheaper vegetable oil. And all of this was done very cleverly to make it look like it was the people demanding this change, right? I mean, I come from a marketing background, a PR background, and worked in PR my career. And I know this is how it happens. You convince people to buy your product by making it look like it's their decision, their idea.
Right.
And so we were told that margarine is better than butter, that Crisco is better than lard, all of these products that we were sold, the canola oil is healthy and it's organic, and cold pressed canola is better for your arteries than that evil butter. Those evil saturated fats. And that actually is an absolute lie, right? It's
Right.
the opposite of the truth. But
Yep.
the motive there is purely follow the money. The motive is canola oil is cheap. It's a GM, it's a genetically modified crop, rapeseed. They changed the name to canola, made it sound pretty. And it's actually an industrial lubricant. A lot of margarines and anything made out of cottonseed oil. Cotton, after you take the fiber from the outside of the cotton, you have these seeds left. It's an industrial waste product. What do you do with the seeds? Well, sometimes they feed them to animals. It's animal feed, but you can also extract the oil from that. And it's disgusting. It's white. It's the only way to make it look like a usable fat is to hydrogenate it, and we know that hydrogenated fats are bad for our arteries, and then put yellow food coloring in it, and then ta-da, you have something that passes as butter. And today the new vegan movement tells us, oh, let's take it a step further. We're going to now replace milk with seed oil products that are fake milk. We're
Right.
replacing cheese with seed oil based fake cheeses, nut and seed based fake cheese. We're replacing creamers, coffee creamer and everything, with nut milk, oat milk, coconut, etc. But oat milk is the big trendy one right now. And then you have another seed oil disgrace, which is what's left. Oh, fake meat. So let's do the ultimate and create artificial meat substitutes that are largely made out of these industrial waste products that you would normally feed to animals or bury or burn or have to get rid of. But let's feed it to humans and make it look and taste like meat. So I mean, and then this is all marketed to us using movie stars like Kim Kardashian and the Oscar ceremony and other big media events, Hollywood generated events to make us think, oh, this makes you beautiful. This is the right thing to do. This is what the hip people are doing, and people are falling for it right and left.
Yeah. Wanted to go back to something you said about the agrarian age.
Mhm.
And that for the most part, we were hunter gatherers, and the hunter gatherer lifestyle was pretty basic and pretty simple. You had meat that you could catch, whatever it was, and there were things that were growing like berries or roots.
Mhm.
There wasn't a lot of management of crops and planting, but it was a very, very different kind of consciousness and way of life, right? It was more kind of open space in a lot of ways, right? And it was more free. Yeah, and
It was totally free.
you had to continue to kind of replenish your stocks, but that continual exercise was also what made you strong, right? It made you strong, and there was also hierarchies that would develop inside of those communities, right? And they literally divided down sexual lines,
Mhm.
gender lines. Like for the, 9 times out of 10, the men would go out and deal with, the beasts of the land, or have to protect whatever their tribe had acquired forever, however long they were going to have it. And then women, of course, were doing, things that were associated with the preparation and the family and the rear. So, I mean, this really went down like this kind of gender line. Now, of course, when you kind of move that forward and people are kind of combining that with farm life and ranch life, that the
Mhm.
duties that the women perform are very similar to the men, right? Because there was all hands on deck with ranch life and farm life. That's a different discussion. But then the agrarian thing comes in, and there are people who begin to work on large yields of crops, but then they need people to work those large yields, right? And so now they begin to amass groups of people, and this is where cities and civilizations really come into play, is the birth of agrarianism. And I don't have the figures in front of me, but there's this general thought that once people began to be herded into the agrarian uh, community, right, or into an agrarian system, they were much more easily managed. And they also began to lose their height. And there is a discrepancy between the hunter-gatherer height and the height of people that had been in an agrarian community for a period of time. And then what comes out of that agrarian community is not only the theoretical enslavement of the people to work those crops and feed the entire community, but you have the birth of armies. That comes out of the agrarian community. Now you've got a mass of people that you can use to go out and get more land or more resources. And at that point, the hunter gatherers didn't have, much of a chance because they were dealing with these huge numbers. And so we begin to see the birth of civilization, when the agrarian evolution, theoretical evolution of humanity kicks in. And we're kind of at the apotheosis of that right now. And, and I think it's always been this ongoing battle against the hunter gatherers. And the hunter gatherers have
Mhm.
independent thought. They're free range. These are free range people,
Well, they
right?
have
And
weapons.
they had weapons, but they were also free range people. And so now, what are we looking at now? 15-minute cities, right? Where everything that you want or need is within 15 minutes of where you live, which is really the kind of the capstone of the pyramid of the agrarian evolution. And what's going to fuel and power those 15-minute cities? It's the same thing that started it off in its inception: plants, agriculture, the plant-based diet. It's the same story all over again, right? And a lot of people who are in the hunter-gatherer mode have one common denominator, and that's the O positive, O negative blood type. And when
Oh, I'm an O positive.
so I was really into the Peter Diadamo Eat Right for Your Type when it came out. And a lot of people know what I'm talking about. So when I found out that I was, and I knew I was an O positive, and I looked at the O blood type diet, I'm like, you know, it's pretty much what we're looking at in the background, and root vegetables, not a lot of, not a lot of plants involved in the O blood type. The A blood type, you get into the more vegetarian and agrarian diet. The B is more urban. And then you have the AB, which is a strange crossover, and those are very unusual people. So this has been going on for a while. And I remember for me, and then we're going to go back to you, and we're going to kind of track this period of time where you're fully vegan and you come out of it. We'll talk about that. But my own experience was I was living in Oakland, and I was working in San Francisco. And I think it was around 94. And I decided to become a vegetarian. And for the first couple of weeks, I felt really good. And then I noticed I started to have this diminishing returns on the diet. And I started to feel sluggish. And I started to feel cold all the time. I'm like, what's going on here? Or why am I feeling like this? I'm supposed to be, for those first 2 weeks, man, I felt great. I felt alive. My digestion took a little bit of a break. But then I was on the other side of this thing, and I was starting to decline. And I remember having this astrological reading with this guy, Louis Turry, who is a character. He claims to be the reincarnation of Nostradamus, which I'm not sure that would be such a great claim based upon what I've learned about Nostradamus. But he used to do these readings where he would take your true node and put it right on the ascendant, and then the south node would be on the descendant, and then he would look up your birthday in an ephemeris, and he would just put the planets based on where they were in your ephemeris on the chart. So he noticed that I had Mars in my 10th house with that system, and I think it came up that I was a vegetarian, and he said, "No, you have Mars. You have Mars in your 10th house. You need meat." So I said, okay, I'm good with that. I went out that night. I had a burger, and I felt, wow. I felt like Barnabas Collins on Dark Shadows. Like, yeah, I'm feeling this, right? So the interesting thing, kind of a long story, but the interesting thing is when I relocated my chart to Texas, when I moved to Texas, Mars moved up into my 10th house, and I'm freaking surrounded by cows. Like I am in Cattle City here.
Yeah.
Right? And there's no shortage of beef where I live.
Austin, Texas is ground zero for the carnivore movement. That's where the carnivore MD lives.
Really? Who's the carnivore
Paul Saladino, MD. You got to get him on your show.
Okay. All right.
And his girlfriend, she's another carnivore. She's this super hottie carnivore chick. Really deeply into it. Yeah. Yeah. They're. So
yeah, I mean, so this is a really interesting.
He got Joe Rogan to go carnivore. He was on the Joe Rogan show.
Oh, really?
And then Rogan went carnivore for a month, and he got rid of his autoimmune disease, his vitiligo. And his before and after pictures, I mean, he went from like pudgy and, beer gut and everything. By the end of the month, he was like buff, 6-pack. And he said, I'm doing this. And he's still a carnivore. He stuck with it.
Yep. There's
powers of the mind. Once you start eating a predominantly meat-based diet, it's like going on the limitless pill.
Right.
So much focus and so much energy. Mental clarity.
It certainly changed my life. And I'll tell you what else changed my life. And this gets into the whole, again, diet phase, is it was kicking lectins and oxalates. So that was another big piece for me, especially the lectin piece. And a lot of people don't know what lectins are, but although the people who watch the show probably do. But the lectins were, I had and I was, eating meat. So I thought, well, this isn't going to hurt. This isn't going to hurt. But when I was doing the lectins, I was having severe back pain all the time.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. And then I stopped it. And about 3.5 weeks later, it was gone. Right. And I still have issues, but they're different issues. So we're in this revolutionary time with diet, and we have these radical watchdogs that
Mhm.
have been turned loose that are going after people like yourself. And there's a couple of YouTube videos where they attack you directly.
Uh-oh.
Well, you know that, right? Come on, you know that.
I
They're
know, but I refuse to watch these videos. I don't want to call attention to them. I haven't talked about them. I have a pretty strong following now in social media. I'm reaching about 4 million people a month in my reach, and 57,000 followers between all my accounts, and they don't care.
well, the claims are ludicrous because I know you, right? They're ludicrous. I know you. I knew who you were and what you were doing at given points of time along the way. Right now, clearly there was a gap. I left California in 2012. So you and I don't
That
have
was
this.
when I was really starting to hit end stage veganism. And then it was in 2014, I got very sick. I was sick all the time. And in 2014, in 2012, I was in Mexico and I got very sick during the end of the Mayan calendar. I
I
was
remember that. You and I were
helping
communicating
produce the
through that
Synthesis
period.
2012 festival at the pyramids.
Yep,
And
I
I
remember
was
that.
still
That was a
plant-based.
clusterfuck, right?
It was, yeah, it was like a fire festival. And
Yeah.
and I got maybe dengue or something. I ended up in a hammock on the beach, so sick I couldn't move for a month, just vomiting and diarrhea, and finally got to a doctor who gave me antibiotics, and I managed to get on a plane and get home. But then I was still sick when I got back to the States, and it was around 2014 that I learned about gluten and the work of Dr. William Davis, and a friend of mine, actually the friend who we were making those sunbasket meals that I'm being accused of taking pictures of meat. I made those sunbasket meals for him, and he showed me videos on YouTube of this doctor and the scientific reasons why we shouldn't be eating gluten. And I decided to kick gluten, and I did feel better for a while. But then my health continued to deteriorate. And now I understand why, but it's complicated. That's the problem. It's the reasons for this, the lectins and the oxalates are just part of the picture. The lack of nutrients that are in the meat. It's not just vitamin B12. We're told, oh, it's just B12. It's actually 20 different nutrients that can only be found in red meat. Fish isn't enough. Chicken's not enough. You need that red meat to get these nutrients that are essential for all human beings, regardless of your blood type. And, so you're not getting the saturated fat, which all human beings need saturated fat because that's how we make vitamin D3. The sunlight is converted into D3 using the saturated fat. But if you use plant-based fats, like canola oil, what happens when you're exposed to the sunlight? You burn, you get skin cancer. So
Yeah, it's a really big deal right now.
all of this is a really big deal, but it's not an easy thing to understand or learn. It takes months of learning, reading books, following different doctors, following nutritionists, going down the rabbit hole before you understand the reasons why you feel better when you start eating meat again and you stop eating plants. But it's not simple.
Right. I mean, I think for certain people, the proof is in the actual meat or gristle itself, right? Because when they eat it, they're going to experience something different in their body. The part that I think where all the fine tuning comes in are the things that go along with eating meat or other things that you eat at dinner or other things that you eat at lunch. So it's not just like, hey, let me have some meat. Well, if you're having meat and you're having corn on the cob with your meat, that could be problematic.
Or
Right.
if you're eating meat and you're eating tons of sugar,
Right.
Or if you're eating meat as part of a fast food meal,
Right.
that's still better than not eating meat at all. But all of these studies that we hear about meat causing colon cancer, red meat causes cancer, those studies are skewed because they're analyzing data from people who ate meat along with gluten, so along with seed oils. So you don't blame the burger for what the bun, the fries, the shake, the Coca-Cola, the apple pie, the whole meal caused these problems, not the meat.
Right.
And the
Right.
meat gets the blame. So, this is all a big unraveling that's starting to happen now. And there's a huge pushback. And the pushback you see is when you see these disinfo videos, like the two that were created to hit me in YouTube. I'm told that the instigator of all of this isn't even a real person.
It's really interesting. Like
A troll. They're a paid troll.
I'm a carnivore and you're a carnivore, right?
Born
I
again
don't
carnivore.
I
Recent.
don't I don't feel like I need to go hunt down vegans and make a big deal out of their propagandistic World Economic Forum diet, right? That's not a mission for me. But on the other hand, the vegans who are not the meat eaters and the carnivores are the ones who are actively and aggressively going after you and other people that oppose their diet. I think that's kind of interesting. It's a real dichotomy.
Well, they want to discredit this movement to try to stop it.
But you would think that being plant-based would make you, well, maybe a little more passive, right? A little more peaceful. And then and these dirty, savage meat eaters, they're the ones that would come after you with blood dripping from their face. Honestly, it's like, I got no interest in putting vegans on blast, right? Just live your life, I'll live my life.
Go into Google and type vegan diet and mental illness.
Right.
The incidence of mental illness is higher amongst people who eat a primarily plant-based diet. And when we say plant-based diet, most of the grocery store is plant-based.
Yeah.
Going to any grocery store, especially a cheap grocery store like Grocery Outlet, Trader Joe's, 90% to 95% of what's in the grocery store in the front and in the middle is made out of plants. It's all vegan food. And more you're seeing labels that say vegan, right?
More than vegan, I'm seeing carbon friendly.
Yeah, I'm seeing carbon friendly and carbon data on the package.
That's right.
And this makes us feel good about giving up our essential nutrients and essentially malnourishing ourselves voluntarily, and not only just voluntarily malnourishing ourselves, but paying more for it.
Right.
I've posted pictures. I go into a grocery store, I see the fake meat and the fake milk and the fake cheese next to the real stuff, and I take pictures of the prices, and it's invariably the fake substitute costs more. So not only are we being conned into giving up our basic nutrients, but we're paying more for it. And those companies get to use subsidized agriculture, right? They get subsidies for those basic ingredients that they're making those foods out of. Corn, right? Soy, these are subsidized, wheat. So they get cheaper ingredients to begin with, or they're even using something that's really an agricultural waste product, like anyway, I don't want to get too much into the details.
No, but I think it's an important piece to take note of, because they're making money coming and going both ways. It's a very lucrative business now, and it's all tied to a type of a religion that's emerging, right? The green religion, and this whole idea of like fake Gaia, this fake Gaia religion. And I remember
Gaia. Wow, I've never heard that before.
Yeah, it's like fake Gaia. It's like a simulacra of Gaia. And by the way, a lot of this comes out of this period where you have people like E.F. Schumacher writing Small is Good.
Small is Beautiful.
Small
I
is
read that
Beautiful.
in college.
Right. You have Paul Ehrlich. You have all these people that are
Read all those people.
right. So there's this one.
Francis Moore LePay.
Right.
Tony
That's another one.
Robbins.
Right. Tony, exactly. What is it? Diet for a what?
Diet for a Small Planet.
Diet for a Small Planet.
New
Right.
America. Yeah.
Right. Right. And I saw John Robbins speak, very compelling speaker, very good speaker. And he made a really good case for being, I think it was vegetarian. He was a vegetarian, or was he? I'm not sure if he was.
Well, he felt guilty about the fact that his family, the Baskin Robbins family,
right,
made their fortunes off of clogging people's arteries or making them unhealthy, and he wanted to do.
He was a very effective public speaker, so I could see why there would be people that would hear him and go, "Oh yeah, I'm in." He had conviction. But there's this one book that you can find on the internet, and I'm not sure if they actually made a hard copy. I'm sure hard copy exists out there if you wanted to purchase it. It's called Changing Images of Man, and it came out of the Stanford Research Institute.
Oh, wow. Never heard of it.
And Willis Harman, who was one of the founders of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, is one of the authors. There's another co-author, and there are a number of people that they tasked to basically create like a user's manual for the decades ahead. And one of the people that they tapped was Joseph Campbell. So Changing Images of Man talks about what's needed in order to get humanity to all move in the same direction. And they talk about the earth quite a bit in this book. And they talk about essentially creating a new religion around the earth. And so that's what we're seeing now. Like all the stuff comes out of think tanks, and eventually they just kind of move it into the mainstream. So that's what we're seeing. Hi back there.
Yay! Hi. I'm going to come listen in particular, and my friends come in a minute.
Only if you eat meat.
I fed her bacon and eggs this morning.
Vegan's not allowed in that room right now. Okay. So yeah, I mean, this is all part of this psychological operation to start a new religion, and the new religion must have its dietary sacraments, which is the plant-based diet. So it's all tied together. It's all part of, the reset, the new emerging paradigm that they're kind of putting the pieces into place with electric cars, the vegan plant-based diet, right? Gender neutral, carbon net zero. It's all part of it. Here we are, the cavemen and cave women standing in the way of it all.
Well, I personally don't believe that in evil. I don't think people are inherently evil, or that the world is inherently evil. And I think the road to hell is paved with good intentions. That behind all of this, we have good intentions. The intentions are good, but the outcome is misguided. And that's due to a lack of being informed. It's a lack of information. It's a lack of data. It's a lack of science. But that information is now available. I mean, we have access to PubMed. We have access to medical studies, and anybody can access this information and learn what's really going on. And as the people start accessing the data, or even doing informal studies, like with the carnivore movement, there's no funding to fund studies to prove that the carnivore diet is, making these phenomenal outcomes that people anecdotally are experiencing and talking about on the internet. So the data that does exist, Michaela Peterson, who's the daughter of Jordan Peterson, Michaela went on a carnivore diet. She created her own diet called the Lion Diet. And then she was at the TED conference and did a TED talk about it, and they banned her TED talk.
Well, that's sacrilegious. That's sacrilegious, right? It's not
she reversed her juvenile arthritis that was so severe she had multiple operations to replace joints as a
Right.
child. And Jordan Peterson then went on the diet and he reversed all of his mental health issues. And he started talking about it. And, and Joe Rogan, the top podcaster in the world, he goes on the diet. He starts extolling the virtues. So it's out. The genie's out of the bottle now. And now you have doctors, scientists, researchers, nutritionists, and independent researchers trying to come up with the data. But what they lack is the big money, the multi-millions that you need to fund these studies to prove
Right.
that the diet that humans have eaten for the last for 2 to 3 million years might actually be the diet we should be on. Like
So
we need money to prove that.
Another
It's
thing
ridiculous, but intuitively we know that's obvious.
right. Another thing that has come out of this kind of ongoing dichotomy of beef, plants, people who are trying to find organically sourced beef is this whole movement around how fields and pastures need cows and bison so
Mhm.
that they actually perform a role in keeping
Absolutely.
these grasslands alive.
True.
Right. This is and there's a company here. It's a company, it's a family couple that started off with these, kind of bison bars, or I forget the name of them, but now this is what they're doing. They take people out to their land and they show how these animals are a part of the ecosystem in a way that's vitally important. And of course, if you're going to have the animals, you have to thin the herd, right? And part of thinning the herd is being able to create conscious animal products. And I feel like that's the next step in all of this, because I think as meat eaters, you and I could probably agree that the factory farming of animals and the factory processing of animals is not the best way to do it, right?
It's awful, but what it did is it created cheap food.
Right.
We used to, as Americans in 1900, I just found this statistic yesterday. I wish I had the source at mind. 44% of our income used to be spent on food. And through these factory farming practices and industrial agriculture, the price of food has come way down to like less than, I think, 14% of our income was spent on food. Now, we're seeing that price increase right now, but we still have access to incredibly inexpensive nutrition. And as you said, like 15 minutes from everyone, you've got a multitude of grocery stores and all these choices and options year round, and it's cheap. A lot of times it's a lot cheaper than growing it yourself, right? So the price we pay for that is that the animals have not been treated well. They've become part of a factory. The humans that farm the plants and pick them are not treated well. The earth is not treated well. It's saturated with chemicals and pesticides and herbicides. And I just drove through the Salinas Valley and up of 101 on my way here 2 days ago, and really observed, like, what does farmland look like now? And it looks like industrial. It's industry. It's you see lots of big tanks full of chemicals and lots of industrial equipment, and it's not a pretty sight. But what is pretty is the grazing land. When you go past the land that's being grazed with cows, it's gorgeous.
Right.
That's the big heavenly, the rolling hills with the oak trees that you see throughout California and throughout the West. The beauty through the Midwest is the grazing lands, the grasslands, and the trees are still there. And not only are the trees and you don't need pesticides, by the way. Grass-fed ruminant meat is so clean for the environment because there's nothing sprayed on it. There's no herbicide. You wouldn't use herbicide because they're eating weeds. You want the weeds. The animals are eating weeds. So if you grass fed, the ruminant animals are the sheep, the bison, the buffalo, the deer, right? The cows, the goats, and more exotic ones like antelope. And these animals have a digestive system that magically can transform grass and chaff and seeds and things that are cellulose, indigestible to humans. They have a 4-stage digestive system that can transmute that into food and nutrition that works for people with the carnivore digestion, right? The digestive system of dogs, cats, lions, humans. We're meant to eat that. That's what our digestive system can handle the best. And so we can't eat the grass. The grass doesn't, the nutrients are there, but we don't know how to utilize it. We can't ferment it. We don't have that digestive system that those animals have. So, here you have a beauty, right? Where also all the other wild animals coexist. Go to a grazing land and listen, and you can hear the insects. You can see the butterflies. You see bees. You see other animals, birds, rabbits. All the wildlife is able to coexist with the cattle. It's ridiculous to blame the cow and grazing for global warming or any percentage of global warming when it's quite the opposite. And not only that, the grass goes deep, 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 deep into the ground, and those root systems are a carbon sink. So, and furthermore, in order to have vegetables, you need the cows, because what do they produce? Hello, fertilizer.
Right.
It's their urine and their poop that fertilizes the soil and makes it fertile. We need that. And we also need the bone meal and the blood meal and other animal byproducts, as they call it, or animal fertilizers, fish emulsion, bone meal, blood meal, crab meal. These are all what is used to fertilize your tomatoes if you want organic food. It's called regenerative agriculture.
Yeah, let me show you. Let me show you an example of this. These were the people that I was thinking of. Now, this is right here in the Hill Country.
In Austin?
No.
Oh, look at this gorgeous website. Wow.
Yeah. So this is called Rome. And this is a couple who have really, put their footprint in this world. And they have products, these really, really good products, which you can buy in the store now, right? Force of Nature products. I've had their meats, and they're not far from where I live, but this gives you an idea of what it's all about, where they lay down the philosophy through the land stewardship of Katie and Taylor. Rome Ranch is currently amid a large-scale ecosystem restoration process, which livestock is used to replicate the patterns of native species. Inspired by leaders in the regenerative agriculture space, the ranches operate in a holistic context that utilizes high-intensity planned grazing methods, emulating the biodiversity found in nature. Rome Ranch is a multi-species operation in which the animals symbiotically support each other, increase the overall health of the land, and improve the resilience of the farm. We raise the finest grass-fed, free-range bison, beef, pork, chicken, and turkey year-round. So this is not far from. I should get these people on my show.
You should.
Actually,
I got to come out there to Austin and start documenting this movement, because I'm seeing this happen more and more, where regenerative ranching is happening, and another part of that is the distribution, Robert.
Yeah.
So, and that's where I started noticing that my followers were Bitcoiners. More and more Bitcoin people with the laser eyes have been following the Recovering Vegan. I'm like, why? And I started asking them, and the the link between Bitcoin and beef is decentralization.
Right.
So these independent ranches, like the one that you just showed me, by using decentralized finance and decentralized agriculture, what they want to do is form a network between the small farmers where they could use the internet to send meat direct to the consumer. This is to fund these ranches using the cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, and also enable them to distribute. This really isn't happening yet on a big scale, but you're seeing like butcher box. So you're seeing direct to consumer. A lot of the ranches and farms now, you can contact them directly through their website,
Right.
and order the meat. And
Yeah.
this is something for rich people, unfortunately, because you got to buy large quantities. You have to have a deep freezer.
Well,
you
you can go in on a cow with 4 people. You can get a quarter of a cow. It's not that expensive. But you do
Right.
you do need to be in a place where you do have a freezer that you can keep the
And where
meat.
you don't have power outages, because if you have a big power outage and you don't have a backup, so then you need a backup generator,
Right.
or backup solar generator.
Well,
But
some people do can meat, right? Like you can
Oh, yeah.
can meat just like you can raspberries. Maybe a little bit of a different process, but the same idea.
Potted meat. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's
Our
that.
grandmothers and our great grandmothers used to do this stuff. It wasn't that long ago that
Right.
all of these practices were typical, and they're still typical. Like when I lived in the south of France in the early 2000s, before I went vegan, I lived with a 93-year-old French grandma who was making pate and foie gras and all of this, and I learned about that.
Yeah.
The authentic European diet originally was something a lot closer to what we would call a keto now.
Right. I think we've just seen this really major phenomena happen in 2020, which was all of a sudden people wanted to get out of the cities. They wanted to go back to the land. You've got a bunch of people now that are being homesteaders, trying to be off the grid, self-sufficient. And that just happened, right? That just happened 2 years ago. And it's still kind of happening, not to the same degree. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what comes out of those people that made those journeys and those commitments, right? How are their lives going to change, and how are they going to change our lives as a result of that? And so I think this is a really interesting thing to keep our eyes on.
Well, there's one wrench that could be thrown into this, and I hope it's just a conspiracy, but there's talk about vaccinating the animals.
Oh, I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think it's on the table, right?
Well, that's a problem. And then you also have rising prices and shortages of things like eggs right now.
That's the whole chicken feed thing, which we've covered before here. Well, not here on my other show, but
So all of this makes this new model of decentralized agriculture, where independent small farms are able to create their own distribution network and go direct to the consumer. That's where we have the potential to make this all work. And it's ultimately better for the planet. It's better for communities. It's better for the farmers. It's better for our health. And it's happening. It's a new movement. You're just like on the very cutting edge of it right now.
Yeah. So let's just get into your recovery a little bit, because I think that's an important part of the conversation that we haven't really dove into. So
you're on the air, honey.
So
this is Teresa, by the way.
Who is it?
This is Teresa.
Hey, Teresa.
She was part of the Anon Salon.
Was that the person that was on the bed?
Yeah.
She's moving around a little bit, huh?
She knew, you know the same person. The
I
producer
think she
that
actually
you-
looked kind of familiar to me, believe it or not.
the producer that you used to sing with, he just died.
Michael,
No, not Michael Gosney. Music producer. That she used
Joe
to.
Bullock?
No, the guy who used to produce your music, used to sing. Dwight Loop. You know Dwight?
Oh, I was good friends with Dwight.
I knew you were good friends with
Oh,
Dwight.
really?
So that's your connection. Yeah, you both
Like
knew
my
Dwight.
very best Green Jungle. I'm Teresa Bell, but I'm wearing glasses. I just had cataract surgery, so everything's kind of bright.
So were you in Dream Jungle? Were you in that
Yes.
band?
That was her voice.
That's my
Yeah.
voice.
I saw you
Amazing.
guys play live.
Oh, great. In Santa Fe?
No, I think Bay Area, right? Didn't you play in the Bay Area
San
too?
Francisco.
Oh, yeah. We
Yeah.
played in a lot in the Bay Area too.
So there was a guy in that band who had this kind of outlaw place in Vallejo down by the water.
Oh, yeah. I know you're Ray. Talk about
Ray. So I used to go to Ray's place every now and then and hang out with those guys.
Oh, what's your name?
Robert.
Robert.
Phoenix.
And I'm also from Austin, Texas.
Oh, how about that?
How
You're
about
living-
that?
You're living in Austin, right? My family.
No, I live outside of Boston.
Yeah, Austin.
Yeah.
Outside of Austin's great.
Yeah. Yeah, that guy Ray had a really interesting place. He was
Oh,
living off grid, tapping into the power down by the water in Vallejo, and we used to hang
Grid
out
of
there.
Vallejo.
It was,
Oh my
it
God.
was it was a very cool situation. I don't know what happened to him, but I loved Dwight. Dwight was a great spirit.
Dwight was my very best friend. I could talk to him I miss him so much. So many
I-
people died. Like
yeah.
Katie Wells was my best girlfriend. Dwight Loop was my best friend, male friend. I mean, Celestine, I'm just so sad.
Yeah. Dwight's situation, I think, is a little bit different. He'd been battling cancer for a very long time.
I know. I just never could imagine he would die though. He hung on so long. He was amazing.
But he was a great spirit, very funny, great writer.
Yes.
He was one of these Renaissance guys. I really, yeah. He's somebody that he's gone and you miss him, right? Because he
I
contributed.
met him too.
So much.
I
Just
met
like a
him.
jewel.
Yeah.
Such a kind heart.
Yeah. So how long did it take you to kind of get right? Right. How long did
Me?
it take? Yeah. With your body, how long?
I'm still working on it. I mean, I started in February. Actually, this is like the anniversary of February 2019, around February 23, was when I first woke up and started eating meat again on a regular basis. But it took a while it took a lot of deprogramming myself, literally deprogramming my aversion to eating animal foods, but also understanding how the plant foods were hurting me.
Mm-hmm.
And what will happen is the first time you shift to eating a heavy meat diet, if you've been a vegetarian or vegan for a long time, is it forces your body to start detoxing and dumping oxalate. Not just oxalate, but lectins, phytates, all of these anti-nutrients that you've been over-consuming in the plants are stored in your body, especially in your joints. There's a lot of space there for them to accumulate, and also in the tumors in the body, etc., and in your organs, in your kidneys, as kidney stones. And when you stop eating the plants, you reach a balance in the body where the body can finally start detoxing the overaccumulation that it has stored up. And
Right.
when you dump, it's very unpleasant. And that can be experienced. Rogan, when he first went on a carnivore diet, he complained about the diarrhea. He had severe diarrhea. Some people will have sweats, chills, flu-like symptoms. The other thing that will happen is your gut microbiome is changing. And as that changes, you have very unpleasant Herxheimer reactions as the candida overgrowth dies off in the body and the right bacteria get to inhabit the gut again, and the gut heals. You're going to have really unpleasant flu-like symptoms. A lot of people give up. So it's almost like an initiation to go through that transition. And it's easier to just be on a keto diet. If you keep, some plants in your diet, you don't have that detox, but then you don't get the benefits. So I didn't really have the healing has been really intense in the last 40 days, 41 days. I've been on a carnivore diet for the first time. I'd been eating meat again, but mostly keto, still eating carbs, still eating sugars, still eating chocolate, still eating plants, and removing the plants and going through that really uncomfortable, unpleasant phase has been life altering.
Right. Yeah.
And I've had a complete reversal of my autoimmune disease. I've heard other people say that they've cured Crohn's, IBD, IBS, colitis with these low fiber or fiber-free all meat diets. And I was like, yeah, right. Well, it's true. More and
Wow.
more, a lot of data to support this. And, I was talking about it with my mom, and she said, well, yeah, your grandmother had colitis, and the doctor put her on an all meat diet.
Interesting.
So this is, and my great grandfather also went on an all meat diet. So this is, some of us have this we have MS in our family or autoimmune disease in our family history. We have a certain gene type that is more likely to have trouble with plants, with the overaccumulation of plant toxins. My dad had gout. Again, that's also related to overconsumption of oxalate. And to let your viewers know, oxalate's what's in spinach.
Right.
Spinach is the highest oxalate, oxalis, which are little clovers that you see right now in the spring come up. Those also have a lot of oxalate. You see, all of the leafy green, dark leafy green vegetables, except for arugula, are high in oxalate. It forms a crystal. It literally looks, if you look at oxalate under a microscope, it looks just like a crystal. But little microscopic crystals inside your body accumulating. And when those exit the body, it feels like glass scraping your intestines. It literally feels like sand or rocks coming through you. And these bind with calcium and they form calcium oxalate stones, and they crystallize in your kidney. You get kidney stones, for example. You get breast tumors.
Absolutely, yeah.
In this. Yeah.
So the foods that are high in oxalates are
what I ate.
Spinach is number one. Soy is number two. Soy is number two. Almonds are number three.
Almond milk.
Potatoes are number four. Beets.
Sweet potatoes.
No, sweet potatoes are not, but potatoes are.
They're pretty high though.
Beets number five. Navy beans number six. Raspberries number seven. Also avocados, oranges, and grapefruit have oxalates. Dates are high. So these are low level oxalates.
Meat, dairy.
Kale and bok choy are apparently low level oxalate. Cashews, peanuts, and walnuts. But when you get into cashews and peanuts, you're in lectin territory.
Mm-hmm.
So they should be avoided. Pumpkin and sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds are lectin territory. Sweet potatoes, low in oxalates. Broccoli, low in oxalates. Kidney beans, but then you're back in lectin territory again. Blueberries and blackberries, low in oxalates, and dried figs. So there you go.
Well, it's not just, I'm reading a book now that was given to me by her publisher. It's called Toxic Superfoods by Sally K. Norton. She's a Cornell educated nutritionist. Sally is a former vegetarian, vegan, who was experiencing the autoimmune disease and the joint pain and the arthritis. And she started looking for answers in her own diet and went down the rabbit hole, researched, and has become really like the world's leading authority on oxalate. And her book's really controversial because what she's saying not only is this extremely toxic and responsible for many diseases, including arteriosclerosis, may be implicated in certain cancers, but the other problem is that when we use high-speed blenders, the Vitamix, invented in the 70s. My mom bought one. She was an early adopter of the Vitamix. It's very expensive. I bought one, spent $500. And, I was throwing everything in the Vitamix. Oh, I'm going to be healthy. And what happens is you bust up oxalate crystals that are in the seeds. So raspberries, for example, Sally shows how if you look at a raspberry seed under a microscope, it's got these daggers, these crystals around the edges of it. And when you put that raspberry in your Vitamix and blender and bust it up, all that oxalate is released. So raspberry, if you eat them whole, might be low oxalate. But when you eat one that's gone through one of these high-speed blenders, it's like a grenade went off, an oxalate grenade, and that stuff is poisoning you. So you mix kale that goes through the Vitamix, you mix raspberries, you mix blueberries, you mix avocados. This is exactly, and citrus. This is what I had every morning for 18 years. Blender load this big. And, the minimum amount of oxalate that's tolerable in the human body is like this compared to what somebody drinking a green smoothie or a smoothie every day is having. So this superfood and smoothie fad, which Dave Wolf and a lot of us, again, I'm not saying any of these people are bad or evil. It's like we thought we were doing the right thing. We thought this was healthy. We didn't know. We didn't have the data. Now we have the data, and now we're entering our senior years, and more of us are getting sick and looking for answers, because being a vegan for a year or two is a lot different, or even 7 years is not the same thing as being a vegetarian or vegan for 20 years, 30 years. That's when you have the real problems.
Right.
We're like the canaries in a coal mine.
I wonder if David Wolf is going to go full carnivore at some point.
Well, there's rumors that he was eating meat all along.
Really?
The co-founders of Cafe Gratitude, Matthew and Tersis.
Yeah, I had lunch with him
Engelhart?
there one time.
I used to hang out there I was one of the first customers, and I knew them really well. And I even followed them to Maui and went to their farm in Maui. And I was like a groupie of Cafe Gratitude. They're not vegans anymore. They actually started growing their own cows. They started raising their own organic permaculture beef and getting into regenerative agriculture because they realized you needed the animals in order to grow the organic vegetables, but they also started having health problems and they started eating meat again. And so there's been a real backlash in the vegan community trying to discredit them and say they're bad people, they weren't treating their employees right, lawsuits and all kinds of mud that they've been dragged through. But maybe the real reason is because they left the cult.
Right. I did a search for recovering vegan on Google, and you're not alone.
No, it's a movement.
That must feel pretty good to be kind of stepping out on a limb and looking around and seeing that there are other people there with you, right? So that's got to be fortifying on some level.
Well, I kind of wish I dove into it more deeply 3 years ago. When I first chose the handle Recovering Vegan, I was very early in this whole. Sally hadn't written her book yet. Dr. Paul Saladino, hadn't written the Carnivore Code yet. He had not appeared on Rogan yet. Jordan Peterson hadn't gone carnivore yet. All of this has just happened.
Right.
And in the last 3 years, we're seeing this groundswell starting to happen. And, maybe I could have, I don't know, this the commercial marketing part of me says, gosh, it took me so long, right, to finally deprogram myself and wake up. And I think what it took to finally wake up was not only these recent deaths of so many friends, dying. One of my very best friends died, and I know she was a vegetarian. But it wasn't just that. It was somebody very close to me. I won't say who they are because I want to protect their privacy. Somebody very close to me who's a vegan ended up telling me she has MS. And I was like so pissed. I was like, great, I have MS, she has MS, yet another person, ends up with totally getting screwed by the vegan diet. And I was like, this is war. I cannot remain silent any longer. And I went back onto Twitter and started, I was sick again and having a lot of problems with my autoimmune disease. It was getting worse and worse, not better. Maybe with holiday eating, stress. I don't know what caused it to flare again, but I was not feeling well. So I spent a lot of time on Twitter, and my following, since Elon Musk took over Twitter, he must have been, the old Twitter must have been shadow banning me.
Right, suppressing.
Yeah, because when I first got on Twitter, I was reaching like 3 million people a month. And then all of a sudden it was crickets. And so when I got shadow banned, it just wasn't really fun to be on there anymore. So I wasn't spending that much time in my social media. And I'm back, and now we're not being shadow banned, and these more controversial voices are getting seen and heard. I mean, carnivore diet is trending now. It's a major, when you look at what are the trending topics on Twitter, it used to be vegan, vegan, vegan. Now you're seeing carnivore, keto, carnivore diet, oxalate. These things are trending topics. People are talking about them, and the word is getting out.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty clear based on that Google search that I did and the amount of people who are making videos and posts about, I'm leaving the cult, right? And how it's affected their health, their psychology, and
more doctors too. Most of the doctors are ex-vegans, ex-vegetarians, ex-raw vegans.
Well, that's what happened with what's his name? Gundry. Gundry was a vegetarian. And he was doing all these 5Ks and 10Ks, and he wasn't losing any weight. And he realized that there was a lot more going on to it, and that's where we get into the whole lectin and oxalate discussion around diet.
Yeah, it's a deep rabbit hole, and it's complicated, and people tune out because it's a hard thing to understand. It's just too much for them. I mean, what we have to, I think, stick to is the simple messages that what did your great grandmother eat? What did your what did your ancestors eat?
Right.
What would they recognize as food?
Right.
And they didn't have supplements. This wasn't, and people will say, but the human lifespan was shorter then. They didn't live as long as us. And actually, that's not true. The average was shorter because so many babies died in childbirth, and we had so many people dying of infections and poor sanitation, and they did not have the medical, we have a lot of ways to revive people who are very sick.
I think sanitation.
But
it was a big game changer.
But if somebody didn't die of all of these other natural causes, they lived to 100. My great grandmother lived to nearly 100. So did all of her sisters, and her kids are living into, her grandchildren are now in their 80s and 90s. So it's like, wait a minute, wait, my ancestors lived this long, and my friends are dying of stomach cancer and other cancers in their 40s, their 50s. What's going on? This isn't right. This isn't normal. There's something happening that, and not only that, but we're getting the diseases of elderly people way too early. 60 didn't used to be a time when you had all these diseases. 60 was still pretty young, and now you're getting the health problems of a 90-year-old lady when you're 60. Nuh-uh, there's something wrong with this. We need to question it and look for answers, and maybe what we're doing, if what we're doing that's supposedly healthy isn't working, then it's not healthy.
Right. But I've seen so many YouTube videos where there was this one guy who used to be on YouTube. I think they banned him, and he would chronicle vegans through their video journey.
Uh-huh.
And they would start off. I think I spent a whole Sunday watching these videos, and they would start off, being vibrant and happy, and they would have these videos of them making their smoothies, and then he would go, sort of sequencing these things through time,
Mhm.
and 3 years later, they look emaciated, and their hair is really thin, but they don't understand that they're malnourished, right? They think that they're still just humming and vibrating, at the speed of God.
It's the
And
mental illness that sets.
well, that's the part of it, right? And they would have people tell them, hey, look, you don't look healthy. And then they would get paranoid about that and think that it was some kind of conspiracy against them.
Mhm.
And that was really troubling, watching these people. And then you get these guys who were really, really skinny, and they'd start to flex. And it was just like really weird. And I think that they banned that YouTube channel because there was a clear progression from somebody who was healthy and vibrant to somebody who was clearly not healthy and vibrant.
Well, that was what helped me deprogram myself, was I started watching the Vegan Deterioration channel, Goatees. There's somebody named Goatees.
Maybe this is the person I'm thinking of.
Goatees, yeah. A lot of these people have been discredited or, banned or shadow banned.
Right.
Vegan Deterioration, she has a huge following. And a lot of times they're talking about influencers rather than real people. The doctor, Sean Baker, he's a medical doctor who is sort of the kingpin of the carnivore movement. And he's constantly outing veganism. And again, he's been disgraced. He was lost his medical license for a while. Jordan Peterson, he's had problems. I mean, you come out as a carnivore and against veganism, it's why.
So where are the vegans?
controversial?
Where are the vegans
Well,
on
my
the
dad ate. I mean, why is this a big deal?
where are the vegans on the crickets? Where do they chime in on the crickets, the bug diet? Are they pro bug?
Well, I think there's a movement to try to get us to accept bugs as kinder or more ecological, but the problem is the chitin.
The chitin's terrible, and it actually creates a condition in the body which is much more amenable to parasites.
Oh, wow, that's horrible.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
also it can stimulate autoimmunity. So, I mean, I can't even eat shrimp anymore. Shrimp also, you get the chitin. I love shrimp. Shrimp are just big bugs,
Right.
and
They're related
they
to they're related to cockroaches.
I don't know, but they're
They are.
delicious.
No, they are. They are related. They're
And I
related to
thought they were
cockroaches.
a more, maybe more sustainable or more, because it's a small creature. But I mean, we have to understand that we live at the top of the food chain, man. And humans got where we are with our opposable thumbs, our ability to use tools, and because we could get meat.
Right.
And
That was back before the agriculture mafia began to organize people and put them to work in the fields and create armies and build so-called civilization, right?
Interesting. Well,
Right.
I have to get going. I've got a deadline. I have to get to my mechanic.
All right. So real quick, where can people find you?
They can find me at Recovering Vegan on Twitter, The Recovering Vegan on Instagram. Linktree/Recovering Vegan will lead you to all of my latest links.
All right.
Also on Medium. I'll be building a website shortly at the recoveringvegan.com. So
Well, Giselle, we'll have to get you back on when your book comes out.
working on it.
All right.
Definitely.
Focus, eat more meat and focus.
Yeah, now that I feel better, I can finally focus and write. It's been a game changer for me. I feel like I have a new lease on life. And I'd like to encourage anybody out there who's experiencing autoimmune disease, IBD, IBS, colitis, arthritis, overweight issues, thyroid issues. If you have one of these conditions, look into ketogenic and carnivore diets.
All right, Giselle, great seeing you again. Congratulations on your journey to health and taking on the vegan army.
Thank you for having me on to help build credibility for the fact that, yeah, guys, I was really a vegan.
I'm here to report. Yeah, it's true.
And I looked like crap and I was sick all the time.
Well, we're glad you're back. Take good care. Enjoy your time there in sunny NoCal, and we'll see you soon. Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Right. That was Giselle Bisson, a good friend of mine, and she is the recovering vegan, and she is not alone. All you got to do is do a little search on Google, and you'll find out that there are plenty of people, lots of people who are leaving the plantation, right? They're leaving the plantation, and they're waking up to the fact that they were sold a bill of goods. It sounds great. It tastes great. Some of those smoothies taste great. And what are you getting addicted on? You're getting addicted to the sugar inside a lot of the berries that are being used, and the smoothie silk, texture of that avocado that's added in there, and all these other things that go along with it, right? And so it's very seductive in terms of the taste. It tastes fresh and it tastes living and vital. And then there's the ideology that goes along with it. You're helping to save the planet. It's more green. It's organic. It's plant-based. It's got to be, better for you, because you're not hanging out with a lot of sweaty carnivores, right? So there's a whole ideology that is kind of baked into it, and you throw in the Green New Deal, the World Economic Forum, 15-minute cities, low carbon impact, renewables, and it begins to cluster. And now what we have is an emerging cosmology. This is going to be the wave and the trend of the new collective, the organizing principle behind it. You got to have an organizing principle behind so-called civilization. And it fits into the Aquarian model as well. It's, oh yeah, well, stop eating meat for the greater good. It's better for the planet. We have to eliminate those cows. They're adding to the greenhouse effect. Here, have some Beyond Meat. Or take a bug. Your choice. And at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to be successful. I don't. Now, if people sit back and allow it to be sort of this dominant theme in our culture and our society that is celebrated like a new religion, then it might be. It might be. But if you're of sound mind and body, and you step back and you look at what the planned diet is for everybody, you're like, oh, no thanks. No thanks. And it's almost like they're baiting people. They're baiting you, right? And this is what you're going to get. This is what you're going to eat. And if people will accept it, they'll do it. They'll do it. They'll just keep serving it up on a platter. So I think it's going to be interesting how these things evolve, and keep your eye on this whole wave of migration that really took place in 2020, and people saying, bye to the city, and trying their hand at raising chickens and raising livestock and, becoming homesteaders and becoming more sustainable. We've yet to see the full impact of that remigration back to the heartland of the country. And I think that is going to yield some very interesting results as the months and the years progress here very rapidly before our very eyes. So we got about 6 minutes left in the show. And before I sign off today, I just want to pay tribute one more time to King Pat, who is no longer with us. And I think today is the day of his funeral and memorial. And, it's really just really weird to have somebody who's been a part of our experience suddenly pass on us, right? And young. I mean, he's 4 years younger than me, which puts him in his 50s. And a vital person, somebody who took good care of themselves, who exercised, lived up in the northern part of Wisconsin, right on the Minnesota border. And you don't live in those areas unless you can be physical, right? You're dealing with snow, you're dealing with ice, you're dealing with all kinds of conditions that force an individual to, engage with the environment, right? And besides that, he was an athlete and he worked out, and he did not get Dr. Fauci's prescription. And unfortunately and suddenly, he suffered symptoms that are becoming all too common. And I talked about them on my stream this past week. So if I could play a song right now without getting dinged by YouTube for a copyright infringement, I would cue up Sail On Sailor by the Beach Boys, which I think is a great song that talks about the journey that we're all on. And no matter who we share our journey with, for however long we share that journey with them, every single sailor, man and woman, has to continue to sail on into the uncharted areas of our consciousness and our soul, for whatever lies beyond this mortal coil, this everyday thing that we call life. And so, Pat, wherever you are, sail strong, sail fast, and may you reach your destination on the farthest shore, wherever it may be. And with that, have a great Friday. We'll be back here on Sunday night with, guess what? A St. Patrick's Day astrology show. And we're gonna open up the love lines on Friday night. We're going to open up the love lines. So if you have an issue with your love life, your relationship, bring it on over. Dr. Bob will help you out. All right. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Mods, thank you very much for doing what you do, putting in the links, letting people know what's up. You guys are a blessing. I guess Ani's back too. Welcome back, Ani. It's good to see you in chat. And she's the wench with the wrench. And it's always good to have her back. And everybody else, Chataria, much love. Everybody else, much love as well. Take good care of yourselves. Go out and get a big chunk of meat.